Hey folks, welcome to the final episode of the Church Reset read-through. I'm excited to read the last chapter and conclusion. There might be, as this is kind of the questions at the end of the book, this might be one of those areas in which my thinking has changed and evolved more than some of the others, but it's been fun to look back on the book after 5 years and just kind of see how it holds up, see what I've thought about it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I really appreciate everyone who's come along on the journey. If you're just catching this one, they all kind of go together. Each episode, of course, will have its own useful content, but I hope it's worth watching all of them for you. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click that like button just right now. Reach down there and click it. That helps always as well. Algorithm, all that stuff I don't understand. But again, thanks for tuning in, and really enjoyed doing the series. Hope you've enjoyed it as well. Let's go ahead and finish with the final chapter and conclusion. Mark Dever wrote, "Christianity is not for loners or individualists. It is for people traveling together down the narrow path that leads to life. You must follow and you must lead. You must be loved and you must love. And we love others best by helping them to follow Jesus down the pathway of life. It's important that a realistic view must be established before concluding. While many of us have dreamed of something more for the church, and many are excited to be on that journey, that doesn't mean we're promised a smooth path where everything goes perfectly. Still, there is reason to be excited despite the challenges we face. In this chapter, we'll examine some questions that have been raised and some of the concerns I've found in my own experience, but also the reasons for optimism that a shift in church practice can bring. Questions. What if my congregation doesn't want to? Some of the folks I've spoken with in the writing process have expressed frustration that their congregation doesn't seem interested in building relationships or studying the Bible outside of the building. I'm sure there are others who will read this book and want to see changes come to pass, only to find that others are hesitant to make such changes. I can relate to both of those feelings. It can be frustrating to feel as though something that's so important to us doesn't matter to those who we feel should be helping. While every situation is different, a few points should be considered. The most important thing I can say is that we must never be divisive in our efforts to serve Christ. Pulling away from a church family because they don't meet our standards or undermining an eldership because they don't see eye to eye with us is one of the least Christ-like things we can do. On the other hand, just because your leadership has other plans doesn't mean you can't obey God's commands as you understand them. First, if you can be hospitable, do so. The time spent with fellow Christians is never a waste, even if they don't reciprocate or see it as important. Second, go out of your way to stay in contact with your church family. While there are those who might not respond to the attention, there will always be those who appreciate the concern shown to them. That can be a launching place for deeper relationships. Third, seek to either be discipled or to make a disciple. Pray for God to put someone in your life to disciple you or whom you can disciple. If you're seeking to do God's will out of a pure heart, trust that He will bless you with opportunity to do so. He might put a fellow Christian in your path, or it might be someone who is yet to come to Christ. Keep the Great Commission cycle in your mind, with the goal being to turn one or two disciple makers into many. Even though God's work can be frustrating and lonely, He grows us through those times. He builds our patience and faith, and He rewards our efforts to serve Him. So with that, this is one of those, I was more toned down than I thought I was at the time, which is good, because this is one where it's just going to take a lot of patience. It's going to take a lot of appreciating what we have and not rushing ahead, not being upset with the people around us for them not getting there. The other thing about it is, it's not a program. It's not a do this, 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 and this, and take these steps. Life isn't that way. It's very much like raising a family. It's very much like a career and certain things. It's not like school where there's this grade, and you move on to the next thing, and all right, we've gotten rid of this, and now we're adding this church thing, or the church is being more hospitable, and we're all doing this. It's going to come and go. It's going to ebb and flow some, but you want to move in a right direction, and the other thing about it is you just want to increase that feel slowly more and more over time. In the same way with anything you're trying to grow, or as I said, raising a family, you just want to get better at the things you do. You want to get better as a parent. You want to get better at whatever it is you're taking on and helping other people do that. And so the same thing with your church is like, well, we're still pretty program driven. Okay, but are you growing closer with people? Are you moving in that direction? Are things improving at all? And if not, what can you do about that? Where can you help out with these things? And yeah, your leadership might not totally be on board, but it's not, there's not like a statement they have to sign. They don't have to read this book or something like it and go, yes, I'm on board with that, let's do that. So much as it's a feel thing, and that it's kind of hard to explain. Now, this next one's an interesting one. What about the failures of past discipleship efforts? Unfortunately, with the mention of disciple making, some will instantly have a negative reaction. In the last 50 years, the International Church of Christ, also known as the Boston Movement and the Crossroads Movement, I'm not a historian on those things, but I know there's overlap, some similarities, some same name. I'm not going to get into all the nuance there. Rose up with a heavy emphasis on discipleship and disciple making that led to fairly rapid growth. With that growth, though, came extreme discipling practices that bordered on cult-like. They too emphasize relationships, evangelizing, and following Christ, but their abuses provide a cautionary tale of how easily these practices can become dangerously misapplied. Look them up online and you'll find horrifying stories of people who had their lives controlled by mentors and prayer partners in the name of discipleship. Many had friends and family members cut off by the church and were constantly guilted into confessing sins, whether real or imagined. It's understandable that some would be incredibly nervous about an emphasis on disciple making. We certainly should take precautions to avoid such practices, and the best way to do so is to look at others' mistakes and learn from them. There are two key areas to watch. First, we must maintain the Bible's emphasis on humble servant leadership. Anywhere an authority structure becomes too top-heavy, abuse is inevitable. It's not an if, but a when. That's when people start making decisions for others and start dominating their lives to make them fit a vision the leadership demands. Some will take advantage of those under them for personal gain. Instead, Jesus-like servant leadership must be the church's emphasis. I'll stop right there, because if you're a Think Deeper listener, you know we are very critical of the servant leadership model. This was written kind of before that was more controversial and before the sides of it were defined. So if you're not familiar, what servant leadership has come to mean is just keep everybody happy. But what I'm talking about in this context is a leadership that is not run over everybody, domineering. It's there to improve everybody's lives and help everybody thrive and flourish and be healthy, not micromanage their lives. That was the contrast I was drawing here. Usually when you hear servant leadership, it means, well, essentially it means not leading. You can, as I said, look up the Think Deeper podcast episodes we've done on that if you are not familiar. But just some who listen to this and to that would be confused as to why I was saying that positively, so there's your answer. Continuing on. Second, we must pay attention to whether we're cultivating a community of grace or fear. Fear is man's way of manipulating people to act as we think they should. Grace is God's way of giving us the patience we need to keep going when we fall. The stories that come out of such groups often include fear as a driving force for subjugation, holding hell, relationships, reputation, or anything else that matters to people over their heads. We are to withdraw from the unrepentant in our midst, not try to ruin their lives. There certainly is reason to fear if we stray from God's word, but the point of the community is to lovingly rebuke us, not control us. However, an incorrect practice of disciple-making, no matter how dangerously incorrect it may be, must not drive us away from applying the Great Commission. Disciple-making is a non-negotiable part of God's plan for the church. So, it's a real thing. It's a real issue. As I said, they were fast-growing, and so there's an appeal to those. There's something where people can look and go, wow, they're doing something right. It's kind of like the parable of the sower, the ones that grow fast and get choked out. And it gets choked out because of things like this, because the reputation gets so bad, because everybody has a family member who gets caught up in that. In fact, I had a family member who, when she married into the family and she heard we were in the Churches of Christ, she thought, oh, you guys are cult members, because she had been part of this, had some of those problems. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of an issue in itself. That's something we need to be aware of, not overdoing it with I don't know, some of us are just prone to those extremes of like, some is good, more is better. We have to have caution and not make it a fear thing, not make it a micromanaging people's lives thing. Continuing, what about the danger of burnout? In the previous chapter, we looked at the Christian's call to be self-sacrificial with our time. However, that doesn't mean every free hour of our schedules needs to be booked for hospitality, service, or studies. If you're married and or have kids, it should be non-negotiable to have time for your family in the schedule. Plenty of ministers have driven away their families by spending all their time focusing on others at the expense of their family. It would be foolish for any Christian to repeat their mistakes, let alone every Christian. The point in being sacrificial with our time is to do so out of love for others. But love for others must also include our families. Jesus got away from the crowds every now and then. It's important that we do that for ourselves and our families too. So, while we shouldn't dodge commitment to the church by overcommitting ourselves to hobbies and our kids and their activities, we also shouldn't get so tied up in God's work that we forget that our families are part of God's work for us too. It's up to each home to find a balance between spending quality time with each other and making time for the church family and for serving God. This is another one of those, I've used the illustration in this series before, of the put your oxygen mask on first before putting others on, and put your families on before putting the guy in the next rows on. Of make sure you've got the things going that you need to. How's your spiritual walk with God, your prayer and Bible time? How is yours and your spouse's? How, if you've got that down, how's your family devotional time? If you've got that down, your church, whatever it may be, you expand out from there. When you skip levels and there's things at the bottom that aren't where they need to be, and then you start doing stuff above there, you've got a bad structure that's ripe for burnout, for collapsing, for something being exposed, whatever it may be. One step at a time is really important to this. Continuing, what if I live far away? Most cities, particularly in the Bible Belt, offer a number of options when it comes time to choose a congregation of believers. Because of this, it's fairly common for people to drive 30 minutes to an hour each Sunday, often passing multiple congregations on their way. Because all of these options are available, and because we choose the one that's the best fit for us, it's easy to end up in a situation where all of our church friends will generally be our same race, social status, and age, and with almost the exact same beliefs about everything, which seems foreign to everything the church was intended to be. See Galatians 3:28 for one. The solution? When you have to choose, unless there is a clear biblical reason against doing so, join the church that is nearest to your house. Why? First, the further you travel to worship, the more difficult fellowship and service become. It's hard enough to find time to get together with our Christian family outside of Sundays and Wednesdays, and events at the building can be difficult to squeeze into our schedule. Add an hour round trip to the equation, and it becomes incredibly easy to be minimally involved in the lives of your fellow Christians. When someone needs a visit or a meal, that's a steep time commitment, and you might not be able to help out very often. If you're trying to be more hospitable, it might be difficult for them to drive all the way to your home. I'm not saying it can't be done or that it isn't done, but it certainly adds a degree of difficulty which can be limiting. On the other hand, if we go into the decision of where to worship by asking where can I best serve, rather than which church is most aligned with what I want and need, it makes a strong case for staying local. Second, it can add to the difficulty of evangelism. It's much harder to convince someone to go to worship or an informal study with you, and especially to consider doing so regularly, if it's all the way across town. It's equally difficult to try to introduce them to the church family. Beyond that, it's another question to have to answer. People often want to know why our church is different from those all around, and in this scenario, we then have to explain why we chose not just our particular type of church, but why that particular congregation over others that's of the same beliefs. Third, and possibly most importantly, determining to fit in with the nearest congregation is crucial to overcoming the consumer Christianity mindset. Once major doctrinal questions are out of the way, people typically choose where to attend based on what churches have to offer. Basically, churches are asked, what can you do to earn my membership? Instead, we should be looking for the best place to serve and function as part of the body. And it's my contention that that place will typically be the nearest congregation. That's partly because of the reasons named above, fellowship, serving, and evangelism, but it's also because it causes us to go into the situation with the determination to get along. When we go in with a view to find a church that is the custom fit for who we are and what we desire, we minimize the Bible's commands to bear with one another, tolerate one another in love, and accept each other despite differences of opinion. Please realize that I'm not calling for any major doctrinal compromises. In any case beyond that, though, it's important to keep in mind that despite our individual differences, we're on the same team when it comes to the gospel. If there's anything to be learned from Philippians, it's that there is great joy to be had when we work through difficult situations and personal differences for the sake of the church and its purposes. But that doesn't happen when we seek out situations that cater to us, or when we determine to adjust as little as possible. When we drive past congregations to find one that suits us better, the implied message is, you're my brethren, and we're going to spend eternity together, but because we have slightly different preferences, let's just keep to our separate circles here on earth. On the other hand, when we reject this mindset, it gives us the constant reminder that church isn't about us. The message of Romans 14 was not go find the congregation that has your views on holidays, meats, or drinking, but accept each other, don't judge each other on matters of opinion, and build each other up. Being part of a family isn't always easy, and it almost always brings challenges to our preferences, but we're better for it in the end. If you're thinking that you'd like to be more involved with your church family but are too far away, it might be time to think over your options. All right, that was a longer one, but I did that all in one chunk because I wanted to talk about it all together. This is one where my thinking has changed just as a parent. It's very idealistic to say, just look at a map, the one that's closest to home, that's where you need to go. In fact, I drive past I live in Tennessee now, more congregations of the Churches of Christ than anywhere, and I drive past probably 4 or 5 to go where I go. Now, that wasn't always the case. I used to live a lot closer to this congregation, and I've stuck with it since moving, but even then, there were other options in the area, or whatever the case may be, and there was family ties. But one of the other things is, I've had kids in a church in which they were the only kids. that's really hard. It's really hard for them, especially when there are other options around. And being the preacher for that church, I would see other families drive by, and it's like, if we can get all of you to come here, we would have kids. And so it's very hard from that perspective. It's like, stay here. If we all stay here, we've got a great group, but you're driving 30 minutes this way, you're driving 40 minutes that way. There's people crossing paths with each other to go to different congregations each Sunday. Hey, if we all just met in the middle, I understand it doesn't work that way. There's also the preferences thing. There's the size thing. I really wouldn't feel comfortable at a church of 5, 6, 7, 800. I mean, there's big ones around here, opportunities for that. I'm not cut out for that. That's just not something that would fit well for me or my wife, I think. And my kids obviously would like if there were more kids, but we've got a lot of kids where we go. Factors like that do matter, but also, as I said, where can you serve? We're at a church where we can be plugged in, where I can, I'm not the preacher, but I can preach and teach fairly frequently as somebody involved there, and those things matter, of involvement, of family, of things like that. If you're a husband, it's up to you to get your wife in a church where there are women that will influence her well, that there are the Titus 2 older women, that there's those kind of relationships, there's women her age that she can connect with. I mean, things like that. This is a luxury we have, because I know, I've got friends in the western parts of the United States, there's one congregation per town, and what you got is what you got, and that's really rough. If that's the case, I mean, there's not much discussion to be had here. If not, if you are throughout the South, if you're here in Tennessee, Texas, places where there are more options, yeah, there's thoughts that you're going to have to go over, but I don't necessarily stick to the stay closest to home ideology anymore. All right. What about the events we have? I'll admit I've been pretty hard on lectureships, gospel meetings, workshops, and other such events in this book. That doesn't mean they're inherently wrong. I'm not here to dictate your church schedule. The point is simply this: we must know our goal, and we must act consistently in pursuit of it. If we have the goal of bringing as many people as possible to maturity in Christ, then we should act consistently with that goal. We should plan in such a way to achieve that goal, and we should evaluate whether the things we do are supporting that goal or detracting from it. A special event may very well help achieve that goal. In the best cases, the event serves as a launching point for further activity, study, and growth. The trouble is in letting those things become a substitute when the meeting is held instead of relationship-based discipleship. A seminar on a topic like finance, marriage, apologetics, or parenting, for example, can be a beneficial thing, but it also can't possibly solve everyone's problems or bring people to maturity in a weekend. With our goal in mind, we must use such things as a springboard to greater growth rather than as a quick fix. I still go out speaking, doing weekends from time to time. In fact, if you'd like me to come talk about Church Reset, just shoot me a message. I got back from Ohio about a month ago, and a shout out to the people there. That might have been the best anyone's ever done it. There was some speaking, I got up and gave lessons, but they also just took multiple hours blocked out for just fellowship and games, and I got to hang out and meet people in the church there, and we just got to talk and chat, and I got to meet their elders and speak with them and have a good chat with them and about what they were trying to do and the processes, the things they've learned. I got to pick their brains a little bit about things that have worked and not worked, and that to me was way more fulfilling on my end, but I think also more effective for them than having me come in, see me every night of the week, and then I go home. I mean, that's just some thoughts to consider. All right, warnings. In addition to the questions that may arise, I'd like to offer a few warnings from my own experience with regard to a change in practice. Avoid the appeal of cliques. One of the biggest challenges to positive momentum is the formation of cliques. A few spiritually minded people connect with each other and find kinship and a shared passion for biblical things. They grow in fellowship and service to one another, not unlike that which was described in an earlier chapter. However, it fails to extend beyond the group. Others are excluded either by lack of invitation or by inability to fit in with the group. The group can even develop a holier-than-thou view toward other members who apparently must not be as interested in God as those in the clique, as the thinking goes. Sadly, I've fallen into such behavior before. I can tell you from experience that it's not healthy for those in the group and will do nothing to bless those outside the group. Such exclusionary practices are antithetical to Christ-likeness. If all the self-appointed spiritually mature are keeping themselves separate from the immature, it's a sure sign those in the first group aren't all that mature to begin with. Cliques don't look to bring people to Christ, they seek to protect their own comfort. On the other hand, with making disciples as the goal, we should constantly be looking to bring in more people, connect them to the family, and teach them to be like Christ. Those who come to maturity will realize they've been called to bless and train others rather than constantly be fed by other mature people. Therefore, the group should be constantly growing and changing. That means we won't get to spend all our time exclusively with the same group of friends for years and years. and it means we won't always get to handpick our group of friends based on our personal interests and preferences. But we trust the promise that when we pursue God's plan, we'll be far more blessed than when we pursue our own. This is another one of those that's just a feel thing. It's one of those that I can't tell you when you're a clique and when you're not, but I mean, you kind of know if you're not seeing other people, if you go to church and talk to the same people every time. And it's one of those that can start with the best of intentions of growing closer with people, and you start building that. And you know what? Sometimes the other people don't want to, and it might look like a clique to them, but if you're inviting them, if you're open, then that's not your fault. I mean, there's different ways to go with this. And so, yeah, it's something to be careful with, something to keep an eye on, just knowing that it can happen, I guess, is the way that I would put that. All right, don't expect overnight change. I'm realizing this chapter was taking a little bit longer. I think I'm talking a little bit more than I expected, so we're going to get through the next couple of points here on these warnings, and then we will finish the second half of the chapter and the conclusion to round out the book, Lord willing, next week. So let's get these last two before wrapping up this week's read-through. Don't expect overnight change. Like most good things we attempt in life, losing weight, earning a living, learning new skills, there isn't a shortcut, and if there were a shortcut, it almost certainly wouldn't bring lasting improvement. Jesus had the shortcut option at his disposal numerous times when big crowds followed him, but he never took it. He stayed committed to his path of training a few who could go train others. There is no quick path to bringing a person to maturity in Christ, which means there's also no quick path to bringing an entire congregation to maturity in Christ. I've certainly tried, making efforts like preaching entire series on the Great Commission to help Christians see the importance of it. As you might imagine, guys, we have to get out there and make disciples, had little effect. I might as well have said, guys, we have to get out there and build an oak spiral staircase. If they haven't been taught previously, then it's just not going to happen. They may very well be able to build one eventually, but there's nothing I can say in 30 minutes that's going to make it possible. To be fair, I have no idea how to build an oak spiral staircase either. As it's been said many times in many places, disciples are handmade. I almost thought I was going to say Merry Christmas. Sorry. It has been said many times in many places, disciples are handmade. That's how Jesus did it. That's how Paul did it. That's how Elijah did it. And that's how we have to do it. And because disciples are handmade, a church culture of loving, family-like Jesus culture followers cannot be built any faster than the disciples are made. Like the mustard seed of Jesus' parable in Matthew 13:31 and 32, that which starts small can yield great results. We just have to stick with it and avoid the allure of the shortcut. Don't expect perfection. It's important to temper our excitement with the reminder that there is no path to a church culture where everything goes exactly as we want it to and nothing bad ever happens. Humans are involved and we're imperfect, so there are going to be problems. One of the most important things to keep in mind is that we should not expect perfection. Up to this point, the entirety of this book has been spent discussing how much more church could be if we follow God's design. However, if we're not careful with our dreaming and our efforts, we can turn the church into an idol. If the goal is to find the perfect situation, all we will do is get frustrated and migrate from one place to another, or berate all those around us until we realize our goal. That's why the perfect situation can't be our goal. Rather, the goal is to be like Jesus and to help others do the same, and being like Jesus includes a lot of grace, humility, and love. He was patient with us, we must be patient with others. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said it best in Life Together, his book on the beauty of Christian community. The serious Christian set down for the first time in a Christian community is likely to bring with him a very definite idea of what Christian life together should be and try to realize it. But God's grace speedily shatters such dreams. Just as God desires to lead us to a knowledge of genuine Christian fellowship, so surely must we be overwhelmed by a great disillusionment with others, with Christians in general, and if we are fortunate, with ourselves. The sooner this shock of disillusionment comes to an individual and a community, the better for both. A community which cannot bear and cannot survive such a crisis, which insists upon keeping its illusion when it should be shattered, permanently loses in that moment the promise of Christian community. Sooner or later it will collapse. Every human wish dream that is injected into the Christian community is a hindrance to genuine community and must be banished if genuine community is to survive. He who loves his dream of community itself becomes a destroyer of the latter, even though his personal intentions may be ever so honest and earnest and sacrificial. The warning against a wish dream church has to remain ever present in our minds. The thought of creating such a wish dream for you, the reader, was one of my biggest hesitations in writing and publishing this book. The last thing I want is someone criticizing their elders and looking down on their brethren because the church isn't acting in a way that this book has attempted to outline as the biblical view. On the other hand, if it leads to the disillusionment Bonhoeffer mentioned, good can come of it. It's in those disillusioning moments that our heart is revealed. If things move more slowly than I'd like, if people don't act the way I think they should, if there isn't perfect harmony, what will I do? My goal cannot be to make people act as I deem they must. My goal must be to emulate Christ and help others do the same, and then let God handle the rest. If I only love them when they're perfectly in line with me, I don't love them with the love of Christ. The disillusionment helps us see that neither we nor the people around us are perfect imitators of Christ, which should humble us and make us realize the importance of grace and patience. That's such a valuable quote from Bonhoeffer, because there's this dynamic there of this discontentment of it can be better, but sometimes discontented people can't ever be contented. They can't ever go, you know what, this is good, or there's progress happening, and even though it's not perfect, I like the direction it's going. It's not good enough. We got to get there. I'm not seeing everything that I think should be there. Therefore, I quit. I move on, or you guys got to pick it up. And I've dealt with people like that, and they burn out really quickly. They just have this vision, and when everybody else doesn't get on board, well, I have a vision. People don't always get on board. That's one of those things you kind of find out in life with marriage, friendships, church relationships, the workplace, or whatever else. Like, well, if everybody would just listen to me, everything would be perfect. We would just never have any problems. There's a reason God didn't make everybody me. And if everybody were me, we'd probably beat each other up. There's no world in which I get my way all the time. And this is part of sanctification. This is one of the ways God brings us closer to Him and changes our lives, changes our hearts from within, is in the friction and the tension of working together with people and growing with people and moving forward with people and all the things we're trying to do here. And so it's a challenge. It really is. I'm not downplaying that whatsoever. But it's something that, don't have that wish dream. Have the patience. This is a years-long thing. Now, you want progress. It's kind of the old proverb about, don't be afraid of growing slowly, but just of no growth at all. Sometimes it's going to feel like no growth at all. Kind of have the year-long view, the 3-year view, the 5-year view, the 10-year view, whatever it is. Lord willing, you can be at a place 10, 20, 30 decades long, opportunity at a church. And hopefully after decades you are closer. You have better relationships, that the church is more active in building each other up and then outward, evangelism and things like that, for sure. But the easiest thing in the world with this or anything else, I mentioned, health and fitness in the illustration in the chapter there. Read a book and go, all right, this is going to be great. And you wake up the next morning or a week later, everything is not falling into place. And it's like, I quit. I can't take it. I'm frustrated. Getting to where we need to be as a church takes so much prayer, study, time, relationships, effort, love. This is life. This is what we're here for. This is the fun stuff. And so, if we could do it overnight, it'd be kind of boring, honestly. Like that, what would we get out of that? And so, have a positive view about the slow train, about the imperfections. Kind of enjoy the ride. Is the way I would look at that. And so, don't get too caught up in your wish dream that you can't enjoy where you are, you can't enjoy the journey because it's not the destination itself. So, as I said, I'm going to push the latter half of the chapter and the end of the book to next week. Thank you for tuning in. Let's see, this is coming out on Friday, May 2nd. Think Deeper podcast, if you're a listener, is coming back on Monday. We took a month off. Very much looking forward to that, so be sure you're subscribed on that feed as well. Joe and Will and I will be back with a new episode, so I'm going to have to wrap tonight because... it's in about 9 hours. I got to go to sleep and wake up and record early morning tomorrow to have that ready for Monday. So I'll talk to you guys on that one. And if not, then next Friday we will finish up, Lord willing, with Church Reset. Thanks for tuning in.